The beach house party was Vanessa's idea, naturally. Anything that required social climbing usually was. I stood in our kitchen that Friday evening, watching my wife of 14 years apply lipstick with the precision of a sniper preparing for a shot. "You're going to love tonight, Nate," she said, not looking at me in the mirror. "Eric's bringing some interesting people, real movers and shakers. Eric Maddox. Even his name sounded like it belonged on a yacht club membership that Daddy bought." Vanessa's old college friend had recently moved back to our sleepy Southern California beach town, and suddenly my wife was all about networking opportunities and expanding our social circle. "Movers and shakers," I repeated, adjusting my tie. "In Oceanside? What do they move and shake? Surfboards?" Vanessa's reflection shot me a look that could freeze hell. "Not everyone peaked in high school, Nate. Some of us are still climbing." There it was, the casual cruelty that had become her signature move over the past year. "I'm an IT security specialist. Not exactly glamorous, but I make good money protecting people's digital lives." Apparently, that wasn't impressive enough for the new Vanessa. "Dad, you look nice," Lily said, appearing in the doorway. At 12, she had her mother's sharp eyes, but thankfully still had my sense of humor. "Very computer guy at a party." "Thanks, sweetheart." That's exactly the look I was going for. 9-year-old Ava bounced in behind her sister. "Are you and Mom going to dance?" Vanessa laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "Your father doesn't dance, honey. He just stands in corners making observations." "I prefer strategic positioning," I said, winking at the girls. "Like a security camera, but with better jokes." The beach house belonged to some client of Eric's, a sprawling glass and timber monument to California excess, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. By the time we arrived, the party was already in full swing. The usual suspects were there: Vanessa's work friends from the marketing agency, a handful of local business types, and Eric's crew of real estate vultures. I grabbed a beer and found my strategic corner, watching Vanessa work the room like she was running for office. She'd changed since Eric came back to town. New clothes, new laugh, new way of touching people's arms when she talked, new everything, except the wedding ring that suddenly seemed to irritate her. "Nate! There you are, buddy." Eric Maddox materialized beside me with the kind of smile that sold million-dollar properties to people who couldn't afford them. Tall, tan, and aggressively confident, he looked like he'd stepped out of a real estate billboard. "Eric," I said, raising my beer in mock salute, "hell of a party. Your client has good taste." "Actually, this is my place now. Just closed on it last week." He gestured expansively, like he was presenting the ocean itself. "Vanessa helped me pick it out. Woman's got an eye for the finer things." Something cold settled in my stomach. "Vanessa helped you house hunt?" "Oh yeah, we've been spending a lot of time together. She's been showing me around, helping me get reacquainted with the old neighborhood. Such a generous woman, your wife." The way he said generous made my skin crawl. I watched Vanessa across the room, holding court near the billiards table, and noticed how she kept glancing in our direction. "That's Vanessa," I said carefully, "always helping old friends." "Old friends," Eric repeated, his smile widening. "Yeah, we go way back. College, you know. We had some memorable times." Before I could respond, Vanessa appeared at Eric's elbow like she'd been summoned by telepathy. "What are you boys talking about?" she asked, slipping her arm through Eric's with casual intimacy that made my jaw clench. "Just telling Nate about all the help you've been giving me," Eric said, covering her hand with his. "Couldn't have done it without you." Vanessa's cheeks flushed pink. Eric's being modest. He knows exactly what he wants. The double entendre hung in the air like smoke from a gun. I felt like I was watching a tennis match where I didn't know the rules, but I was definitely losing. "Well," I said, forcing a smile, "I should let you two get back to your networking." I walked away before either of them could respond, my beer suddenly tasting like battery acid. At the billiards table, Vanessa's friend Janelle was holding court with her usual crowd of gossips. "Oh, Nate," Janelle called out, already 3 drinks past subtle. "Come settle a debate. We're trying to figure out what to call Vanessa's new jewelry." She pointed to my wife's hand, where her wedding ring sat next to a thin silver bracelet I'd never seen before. "Friendship bracelet," Sierra, one of Vanessa's co-workers, giggled. "That's what she calls it. A gift from an old friend." "Must be a very good friend," Janelle said, waggling her eyebrows. "Very generous." The women erupted in knowing laughter. I stood there like an idiot, watching them joke about my wife's friendship bracelet while she flirted with its giver 20 feet away. "Yeah," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Very generous." The rest of the party passed in a blur of forced smiles and careful observations. I watched Vanessa and Eric dance to music that was too loud, laugh at jokes that weren't funny, and touch each other in ways that seemed innocent unless you were looking for them, which I was. By the time we got home, it was past midnight. The girls were asleep at my mother's house, and our own house felt hollow and cold. Vanessa kicked off her heels and headed straight for the bedroom without a word. "Fun party," I said to her retreating form. "Mm-hmm," she replied, not turning around. "Eric knows how to throw them." "Yeah, Eric's quite the host, and quite the friend." She paused at the bedroom door. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just making conversation." "Well, don't. I'm tired." The bedroom door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. I stood in our living room, still wearing my party clothes, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The house we'd bought together, the life we'd built, the future we'd planned. It all felt suddenly fragile, like a sandcastle at high tide. I walked to my home office and powered up my laptop. If 14 years of marriage had taught me anything, it was that Vanessa never did anything without a plan. And if the past few hours had taught me anything, it was that I needed to figure out what that plan was. I started with the basics: credit card statements, phone records, social media activity. All the digital breadcrumbs that people leave when they think no one's watching. It's amazing what you can learn about someone when you know where to look. And IT security had taught me exactly where to look. The first red flag was lunch. Lots of lunches. Vanessa had been charging expensive meals to her corporate card, always for 2 people, always at romantic restaurants. The second red flag was her phone. New patterns, longer calls, deleted message threads. The third red flag was the jewelry store receipt I found buried in her email trash. 1 silver bracelet, purchased 3 weeks ago. Paid for by Eric Maddox. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. There it was, digital proof of what my gut had been screaming all evening. The friendship bracelet wasn't friendship at all. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Drew, an ex-cop who'd retired early and now spent his time fishing and dispensing unsolicited advice. "How was the party? You look like someone stole your lunch money in the photo Vanessa posted." I checked Facebook. Sure enough, there was Vanessa's post from the party. "Amazing evening with amazing friends. Life is good. #blessed. #new beginnings." The photo showed her and Eric by the pool, his arm around her waist, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that should have included me. I wasn't in the picture, but I could see myself in the background, a blurry figure holding a beer and looking lost. I typed back to Drew. Party was educational. Very educational. Uh-oh, that sounds ominous. Everything okay? I stared at the question for a long time before answering. Define okay. Want to grab coffee tomorrow? I've got nowhere to be and you sound like you need to talk. Yeah, I typed. I think I do. I closed the laptop and headed to bed, where Vanessa was already asleep, turned away from my side with the silver bracelet glinting on her wrist in the moonlight. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, and wondered when exactly I'd become a stranger in my own life. The thing about betrayal is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every smile becomes suspect, every laugh sounds hollow, every "I love you" feels like a lie. I'd spent 14 years building a life with this woman, and now I was going to have to decide what to do with the ruins. But first, I needed to know exactly how deep the betrayal went. And thanks to my particular skill set, I knew exactly how to find out. I reached for my phone and opened the app that controlled our home security system. Time to upgrade our coverage. For safety, of course. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of aggressive California sunshine that made everything look like a movie set. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Vanessa emerged from the bedroom, looking like she'd been hit by a truck full of regret. "God, my head," she groaned, slumping into a chair. "How much did I drink last night?" "Enough to dance on tables," I said, sliding a mug across the counter. "Though you seem to be enjoying yourself." She wrapped her hands around the mug like it was a life preserver. "It was a good party. Eric really knows how to entertain." "Yeah, he's quite the entertainer. Very hands-on host. Vanessa's eyes sharpened, searching my face for hidden meaning. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that he seems very involved with his guests. He's friendly, Nate. Some people are naturally social. Right, social. I took a sip of my coffee, watching her over the rim. Like that bracelet he gave you. Very social gesture. Her hand moved instinctively to cover the silver band. It's just a friendship thing. No big deal. Expensive friendship. How would you know how much it cost? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could have told her about the receipt, about the credit card statements, about all the digital evidence I'd already gathered. Instead, I shrugged. Lucky guess. Eric seems like the type who doesn't do anything halfway. Vanessa relaxed slightly. It's just jewelry, Nate. Don't read too much into it. Wouldn't dream of it. She finished her coffee in silence and disappeared back into the bedroom. 20 minutes later, she emerged dressed for the gym in expensive workout clothes I'd never seen before. I'm meeting Sierra for yoga, she announced, grabbing her keys. Then we're doing lunch. Girl talk, you know how it is. Sure, girl talk. I smiled pleasantly. Tell Sierra I said hi. After she left, I called my mother to check on the girls, then drove to meet Drew at our usual coffee shop downtown. He was already there when I arrived, looking like a retired cop in his standard uniform of jeans, polo shirt, and suspicious expression. You look like hell, he said by way of greeting. Thanks. You always know just what to say. Seriously, what's going on? Your text last night had me worried. I sat down across from him and tried to figure out where to start. Drew and I had been friends since high school, and he'd been through his own messy divorce 5 years earlier. If anyone would understand what I was dealing with, it was him. I think Vanessa's having an affair, I said finally. Drew's expression didn't change. What makes you think that? I told him about the party, about Eric, about the bracelet and the lunches, and the way my wife had been acting like a stranger. Drew listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making notes on a napkin. Okay, he said when I finished. So what do you want to do about it? I don't know. Confront her? Hire a private investigator? Pretend I never noticed? What does your gut tell you? My gut tells me I'm right. My gut also tells me that if I'm right, my marriage is over. Drew leaned back in his chair. Maybe it's been over for a while, and you're just now seeing it. The words hit like a punch to the solar plexus, mainly because I suspected he was right. The distance, the criticism, the way Vanessa had been treating our marriage like a burden instead of a partnership. It had all been building for months. So what do I do? You get proof, real proof, not just suspicious behavior and expensive jewelry. And then you decide whether you want to fight for your marriage or fight for yourself. How do I get proof? Drew grinned, and for a moment he looked like the cop he used to be. Lucky for you, you're married to someone who doesn't understand digital security. And luckier still, you're friends with someone who spent 20 years catching cheating spouses. We spent the next hour planning what Drew called Operation Reality Check. It wasn't complicated. Most cheaters aren't nearly as clever as they think. They are. We just needed to document what was already happening. I drove home feeling like I was preparing for war. The house was empty. Vanessa still at her yoga and lunch session. I had maybe 3 hours to set up surveillance that would either confirm my suspicions or prove me wrong. Honestly, I wasn't sure which outcome I was hoping for. The security cameras were easy. I'd been meaning to upgrade our system anyway, and my job gave me access to high-quality equipment. I installed them in the living room, kitchen, and front hallway, all disguised as smoke detectors or motion sensors. Nothing in the bedroom. I wasn't that kind of creep, but enough coverage to see who came and went. The digital surveillance was even easier. Vanessa used the same password for everything, a combination of her maiden name and birthday that she'd been using since college. Her phone backed up to our shared cloud account, her laptop was connected to our home network, and her social media accounts were logged in on the family computer. By the time she came home, I had a complete picture of her digital life spread across multiple screens in my office. What I found there made my stomach turn. Text messages with Eric going back 6 weeks. Not just friendly catch-up messages, but increasingly intimate conversations that left no doubt about what was happening between them. Photos she'd sent him, photos he'd sent her, plans for meetings that had nothing to do with business. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how casual it all seemed. They talked about me like I was a minor inconvenience, something to be worked around, rather than a real person with real feelings. Vanessa complained about my lack of ambition, my boring job, my complete inability to understand what she needed. Eric, meanwhile, painted himself as her savior, the successful man who could give her the life she deserved. He had big plans, apparently. Plans that involved Vanessa leaving me and the girls to start fresh with him in his new beach house. I was still staring at the messages when I heard the front door open. "Nate? I'm home!" I quickly closed all the windows and walked out to meet her. Vanessa was glowing with post-workout endorphins and what I now recognized as the satisfaction of a woman living a double life. "How was yoga?" I asked. "Amazing. Sierra and I had such a good talk over lunch. She's going through some relationship stuff too." "Relationship stuff?" "Oh, you know. The usual. Feeling unappreciated, wondering if she's settling, that kind of thing." Vanessa studied my face. Actually, she asked me if I ever felt that way. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that sometimes people grow in different directions, that it's nobody's fault, just life." I nodded slowly. "That's very philosophical of you." "I'm a deep thinker," she said, with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "You should try it sometime." She disappeared into the bedroom to shower, and I returned to my office to continue documenting the end of my marriage. The messages painted a clear picture. Eric was pressuring Vanessa to leave me, and she was getting closer to agreeing. They'd already talked about lawyers, about custody arrangements, about how to handle the financial side of things. What they hadn't talked about was telling me. As far as I could tell, they were planning to present me with a fait accompli, divorce papers, and a new reality where I got to see my daughters every other weekend. My phone buzzed with a text from Drew. "How's the investigation going?" I typed back, "Worse than I thought." "Much worse." "Need backup?" I stared at the question for a long time. Did I need backup? What I needed was a plan. What I needed was to stop being the clueless husband who got blindsided by his wife's betrayal. What I needed was to take control of the situation before Vanessa and Eric took control of me. "Not yet," I typed, "but soon." That evening, we picked up the girls from my mother's house and went through the motions of being a normal family. Dinner, homework help, bedtime stories. Vanessa played her part perfectly, the loving mother and devoted wife. If I hadn't seen the messages, hadn't watched her lie to my face all day, I might have believed the performance. But I had seen them, and now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. After the girls were asleep, Vanessa and I sat in the living room pretending to watch television. She was texting someone, probably Eric, while I pretended to read a book. The new security cameras captured every moment, every lie, every casual betrayal of 14 years of marriage. "I'm thinking of taking a business trip next weekend," Vanessa said suddenly. "There's a conference in San Diego that could be good for my career." "A conference," I repeated. "Marketing strategies for the digital age. Very cutting-edge stuff." I nodded thoughtfully. "Will anyone from your office be going with you?" "No, it's more of a solo thing. Networking, you know?" "Right. Networking." I closed my book and looked at her directly. "Well, I hope you learned something useful." "I'm sure I will," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm sure it will be very educational." Later that night, after Vanessa had fallen asleep, I checked her phone. The conference was actually a weekend getaway at a luxury resort in San Diego. Eric had booked the room, a suite with an ocean view and a king-size bed. I sat in my office, staring at the reservation confirmation, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a complete betrayal of everything we'd built together, everything we'd promised each other, everything our daughters deserved from their parents. Vanessa wanted to play games? Fine. I'd been in the security business long enough to know that the best defense is a good offense, and I was about to go on the offensive in a very big way. I opened a new document on my computer and started typing. If my wife wanted a war, she was going to get one, but she wasn't going to win it. Sunday morning brought the kind of domestic normalcy that felt like a cruel joke. Vanessa made pancakes, while I helped Lily with her math homework, and Ava practiced piano. We looked like a family from a commercial, all smiles and syrup and shared laughter. Except I knew it was all theater now. Dad, you're not paying attention, Lily said, poking my arm with her pencil. I asked you 3 times about this fraction problem. Sorry, sweetheart. Let me see. I focused on her worksheet, grateful for the distraction. Okay, so if you have 3/4 of a pizza and you eat 1/4, what's left? Half a pizza, she said promptly. But that's not the hard one. This one is. She pointed to a word problem about dividing inheritance among family members. The irony wasn't lost on me. Well, I said, the key is figuring out who deserves what based on their actions, not just their claims. Vanessa looked up from the stove. That seems a little harsh for a math problem, don't you think? Math is harsh, I replied. Numbers don't lie. Unlike people, Lily added with the casual wisdom of a 12-year-old. Exactly like people sometimes, Vanessa said, shooting me a look I couldn't quite decipher. After breakfast, she announced another outing. I'm meeting Janelle for shopping. Girl stuff. Very boring for you guys. More girl talk? I asked. Something like that. She grabbed her purse, checked her phone, and headed for the door. Don't wait up if we decide to grab dinner. You know how Janelle gets when she starts gossiping. I did know how Janelle got. What I was learning was how Vanessa got when she was lying. 20 minutes after she left, I was in my office tracking her phone's GPS. She wasn't with Janelle. She was at Eric's beach house, and, according to the location data, she'd been there for the past 3 Sundays in a row. My phone rang. Drew. How's married life treating you today? He asked, like a root canal performed by someone who doesn't like me very much. That bad, huh? Find anything interesting in your investigation? I told him about the San Diego trip, about the Sunday visits to Eric's house, about the growing boldness of their text messages. Drew listened with the patience of someone who'd heard similar stories too many times. Sounds like they're getting sloppy, he said finally. That's good for you, bad for them. How is any of this good for me? Because sloppy people make mistakes, and mistakes create opportunities. Opportunities for what? For you to control the narrative instead of letting them blindside you with it. I thought about that while I watched Vanessa's location dot on my computer screen. She was right where she wasn't supposed to be, doing exactly what she'd promised not to do, with the man who was helping her destroy our family. Drew, what would you do if you were me? Honestly, I'd stop playing defense and start playing offense, but that's a decision only you can make. After we hung up, I spent the afternoon with the girls, trying to be present for them while my mind raced through possibilities. We went to the park, got ice cream, played board games. Normal dad stuff that felt precious now that I knew how fragile our normal life really was. Vanessa came home around 6, looking flushed and satisfied in a way that made my jaw clench. How was shopping? I asked. Exhausting, she said, though she looked anything but tired. Janelle dragged me to every store in the mall. I barely bought anything. She held up a small bag from a jewelry store. Just some earrings. Let me see. They're nothing special. Just something that caught my eye. But she didn't show them to me. And when I checked our credit card statement later, there was no charge from any jewelry store. Another lie. Casual and unnecessary. Like lying had become her default setting. That night, after the girls were in bed, I made my decision. I knocked on the bedroom door where Vanessa was getting ready for the week ahead. Come in, she called. She was sitting at her vanity, removing makeup with the kind of careful attention she used to reserve for special occasions. Now she seemed to do it every night. I've been thinking about us, I said. Her hands stilled. What about us? About how we've been drifting apart. About how we don't seem to talk anymore, not really. We're talking now. Are we? Because it feels like we're just going through the motions. Vanessa turned to face me, her expression carefully neutral. What are you saying, Nate? I'm saying maybe we should try counseling. Work on our communication. Figure out what we both need. She blinked, clearly not expecting this response. Counseling? Unless you think our marriage is beyond saving. No, of course not. I mean, yes, maybe counseling could help. Good. I'll make some calls tomorrow. Find someone who can see us this week. This week? That seems fast. Why wait? If we're going to fix things, we should start now. Vanessa nodded slowly. Okay, yes, that sounds good. But her eyes said something entirely different. Her eyes said she didn't want to fix anything, that she'd already moved on in her mind and was just waiting for the right moment to make it official. That was fine. I wasn't really interested in fixing anything either. I was interested in gathering evidence. The next morning, I called Dr. Sarah Chen, a marriage counselor with excellent reviews and a convenient policy of recording sessions for, quote, therapeutic purposes. I booked an appointment for Thursday evening, then called Vanessa at work to confirm. "This Thursday?" she said. "That's so soon. I thought you wanted to work on things." "I do, it's just... I might have a work thing Thursday night." "What kind of work thing?" "Client dinner, but I can probably reschedule." "Please do." "This is important, Vanessa. Our marriage is important." There was a long pause. "Of course it is. Let me make some calls." After we hung up, I checked her calendar. No client dinner on Thursday, but Eric had sent her a message that morning asking if she wanted to grab dinner and talk about San Diego. She was going to have to choose: marriage counseling with her husband or dinner planning with her lover. Either way, I'd learned something useful. Tuesday brought an unexpected complication. My mother called while I was at work. "Nate, honey, I need to talk to you about something." "What's wrong, Mom?" "It's about Vanessa. I saw her yesterday at that new restaurant downtown, the expensive one by the marina." My stomach tightened. "Okay." "She was with a man. Not you. A tall, handsome fellow in an expensive suit. Eric, of course. They looked very friendly," Mom continued. "I almost went over to say hello, but something stopped me. The way they were sitting, the way they were looking at each other, it didn't seem appropriate." My mother had always been perceptive, but this was the first time she'd voiced suspicions about Vanessa. "What are you saying, Mom?" "I'm saying I'm worried about you, son. And I'm worried about those girls. Whatever's going on, you need to handle it before it handles you." "I'm working on it." "Good, because that woman has been taking you for granted for years. And if she's doing what I think she's doing, she doesn't deserve you or those beautiful granddaughters of mine." After we hung up, I sat in my office, staring at my computer screen. The evidence was piling up. Digital records, witness accounts, behavioral changes, lies upon lies upon lies. But evidence of what exactly? An affair? Absolutely. But there was something else, something bigger that I was still missing. I pulled up Vanessa's email account and started digging deeper. What I found there changed everything. Hidden in a folder marked personal projects were documents I'd never seen before. Divorce papers, already drafted. Custody agreements that gave her primary custody of the girls. Financial statements that painted me as an unfit provider, despite my steady income and stable job. But the worst discovery was a series of emails between Vanessa and a lawyer named Patricia Hoffman. They had been corresponding for over a month, planning not just a divorce, but a complete character assassination, designed to leave me with minimal custody and maximum financial obligations. According to their strategy, I was going to be portrayed as an absent father, a neglectful husband, and a man whose obsession with technology and surveillance made me potentially dangerous. They had plans to claim I'd been monitoring Vanessa's communications, violating her privacy, exhibiting controlling behavior. The irony was breathtaking. They were going to use my discovery of her affair as evidence that I was the problem. I printed everything and stored the physical copies in a safety deposit box I opened that afternoon. Then I called Drew. "I need that backup now," I said. "What did you find?" "Everything. The affair, the divorce plans, the custody strategy." "She's not just cheating on me, Drew. She's planning to destroy me." "Jesus. What do you want to do?" "I want to beat her to the punch, but I need help." "You got it. Whatever you need." "I need someone who understands family law. Someone who can help me flip the script before she has a chance to use it." "I know just the guy. Marcus Webb. Used to be a prosecutor, now does family law. He's expensive, but he's ruthless when he needs to be. Set up a meeting." "And Drew?" "Yeah? This stays between us until I'm ready to make my move." "Understood. But Nate..." "What?" "Don't wait too long." People like Vanessa and Eric, they don't hesitate when they see an opportunity. Neither should you. That evening, I sat through dinner with my family, watching Vanessa play the role of loving wife and mother while knowing she was planning to take it all away from me. She helped Ava with her spelling homework, laughed at Lily's jokes about her math teacher, and asked me about my day with what seemed like genuine interest. It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't seen the emails, hadn't read the divorce papers, hadn't watched her lie with such casual ease, I might have believed she still cared about our family. But I had seen it all. And now I knew exactly what kind of war I was fighting. After the girls went to bed, Vanessa curled up next to me on the couch while we watched television. She even held my hand, her thumb tracing circles on my palm like she used to do when we were dating. "I'm glad we're going to counseling," she said softly. "I think it will be good for us." "Me too," I replied, squeezing her hand. "I think we're going to learn a lot about each other." She smiled and leaned her head against my shoulder. "I love you, Nate. I know I don't say it enough, but I do." "I love you too," I said. And in that moment, I almost meant it. But love and trust are different things. And trust, once broken, doesn't heal just because someone says the right words. It heals through actions, through honesty, through the hard work of rebuilding what was torn down. Vanessa wasn't interested in that kind of work. She was interested in starting over with someone else, while making sure I paid for the privilege of losing everything. Well, I had news for her. The game wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. Thursday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. I'd spent the day preparing for our counseling session like I was preparing for battle, which, in a way, I was. Dr. Chen's office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel and the kind of aggressive professionalism that charged $300 an hour. Vanessa met me in the parking lot, looking nervous for the first time in weeks. "I've never done this before," she said, smoothing her skirt. "What if she asks questions I don't want to answer?" "Then you answer them anyway," I said. "That's kind of the point." Dr. Chen turned out to be a small, sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, who had the unsettling ability to make you feel like she could see straight through your skull into your thoughts. Her office was designed for comfort. Soft lighting, neutral colors, strategically placed tissue boxes. But it felt more like an interrogation room to me. "So," she said once we were settled on opposite ends of her couch, "what brings you here today?" I looked at Vanessa, giving her the chance to speak first. She cleared her throat. "We've been having some communication issues lately. Growing apart, I guess. Nate thought counseling might help. And what do you think, Vanessa? Do you want to work on your marriage?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I watched my wife's face, saw the micro expressions that most people would miss. The slight tightening around her eyes, the way her hands clenched in her lap, the pause that lasted just a fraction too long. "Of course I do," she said finally. "That's why I'm here." Dr. Chen made a note. "Nate, what are your concerns about the marriage?" "I feel like we're living separate lives," I said carefully. "Like we're roommates instead of partners." Vanessa seems distant, distracted, like her attention is somewhere else. Somewhere else how? New friends, new interests, new priorities. It's like she's becoming a different person. And I don't know where I fit in this new version of her life. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "People change, Nate. It's called growth. Growth toward what? Toward being the person I want to be, instead of the person everyone expects me to be." Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. "Can you tell me more about that, Vanessa? What kind of person do you want to be?" "Someone who takes chances. Someone who goes after what she wants instead of settling for what's safe. And you feel like your marriage represents settling?" Another pause. Another micro-expression. "Sometimes." The word hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting it. Hearing your wife tell a stranger that your 14-year marriage feels like settling is the kind of pain that lives in your bones. "Can you give me an example?" Dr. Chen asked. "Nate's a good man," Vanessa said, and the way she said good made it sound like a character flaw. "He's stable, reliable, predictable. He has the same job he's had for 10 years, the same friends he's had since high school, the same routine he's had since we got married. And that bothers you?" "It doesn't bother me, exactly. It's just limiting. I feel like I'm living in a box, and every year the box gets smaller." I wanted to point out that the box included our beautiful daughters, our comfortable home, our financial security, and 14 years of shared history. Instead, I asked a different question. What would life outside the box look like? Vanessa's eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. Adventure, travel, meeting new people, trying new things, living somewhere exciting, not just existing somewhere safe. Like where? I don't know. Maybe San Diego, maybe Los Angeles. Somewhere with energy, with possibilities. San Diego. where she was planning to spend the weekend with Eric, where they'd probably talked about starting their new life together while I stayed home with the kids, paying for the privilege of seeing them every other weekend. Dr. Chen was taking notes furiously. Nate, how does it feel to hear Vanessa describe your life together as limiting? Honestly, it feels like she's describing a completely different marriage than the one I thought we had. How so? I thought we were building something together. A family, a future, a partnership. I didn't realize she saw it as a prison sentence. Vanessa flinched. That's not what I said. Isn't it? You just told a complete stranger that our marriage feels like settling, that our life together is a box that gets smaller every year. What am I supposed to take from that? I'm trying to be honest about my feelings. Are you? Because I feel like you're being honest about some of your feelings while hiding others. Dr. Chen intervened before Vanessa could respond. What do you mean by that, Nate? This was it. The moment I'd been building toward all week. I could back down, pretend everything was fine, go home and wait for Vanessa to blindside me with divorce papers. Or I could take control of the narrative. I mean that it's hard to work on a marriage when one person is already emotionally invested somewhere else. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vanessa went very still. What are you implying? She asked. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. You've been spending a lot of time with Eric Maddox lately. A lot of very personal time. Eric is a friend. Friends don't usually give each other expensive jewelry. Vanessa's hand moved instinctively to cover the silver bracelet. I told you, it's nothing. Friends don't usually text each other at all hours of the day and night. How would you know what... She stopped herself, but it was too late. How would I know what you text each other? I finished. Because we share a phone plan, Vanessa. Because your messages back up to our family cloud account. Because you use the same password for everything, and that password is your maiden name and birthday. Dr. Chen was watching this exchange like a tennis match, her pen poised over her notepad. Vanessa's face had gone pale. You've been reading my messages? I've been trying to understand why my wife has been acting like a stranger, why she's been lying about where she goes, who she sees, what she does with her time. You had no right. I had every right. We're married, Vanessa. We share a life, a home, 2 children. When you start having an affair, it becomes my business. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Vanessa stared at me with a mixture of shock and fury, like she couldn't believe I'd actually said it out loud. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said finally. This controlling, paranoid behavior. This is why I need space. Space to do what? Plan your exit strategy? Because I've seen those emails too. Now she looked genuinely frightened. What emails? The ones with Patricia Hoffman. The divorce papers you've already had drafted. The custody agreement that paints me as an unfit father. The financial statements that make me look like a deadbeat. Dr. Chen cleared her throat. I think we should take a step back. No, I said, not taking my eyes off Vanessa. We should take a step forward. Into honesty. Into the truth about what's really happening here. Vanessa was breathing hard, her carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You want out of our marriage, but you want to make sure I pay for the privilege. You want to take our daughters, our house, our life, and start over with Eric while I get supervised visitation and garnished wages. That's exactly what it is. The only thing I don't understand is why you didn't just ask for a divorce instead of planning to destroy me. Tears were streaming down Vanessa's face now, but they looked more like tears of frustration than remorse. Because I knew you'd fight me. Because I knew you'd try to make it difficult. So instead you decided to make it impossible. Dr. Chen finally managed to interject. I think this session has become counterproductive. Perhaps we should... Actually, I said, standing up, I think this session has been very productive. We've finally had an honest conversation about our marriage. I looked down at Vanessa, who was still crying into her hands. For what it's worth, I would have given you a divorce if you'd asked. I would have worked with you on custody, on finances, on making this as easy as possible for the girls. But you didn't trust me enough to be honest. You chose deception over communication, manipulation over cooperation. I headed for the door, then turned back. I'll be filing for divorce tomorrow. But unlike you, I won't be trying to destroy you in the process. I just want what's fair. Nate, wait! But I was already gone, walking through the lobby and into the parking lot where the evening air felt like freedom. My phone was buzzing with texts from Vanessa, but I didn't read them. Instead, I called Drew. How did it go? He asked. Better than expected. She admitted to the affair, and I got her to confirm that she's been planning to blindside me with divorce papers. All on tape? All on tape. Jesus, Nate. You really went nuclear in there. She went nuclear first, I just lit the fuse. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The pretense was over, the lies were exposed, and the real battle could finally begin. But this time, I wouldn't be fighting blind. This time, I'd be fighting with everything I had. And this time, I was going to win. The next morning brought chaos disguised as normalcy. Vanessa was gone when I woke up. Her side of the bed unslept in, her car missing from the driveway. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at Janelle's tonight. Need space to think. Please don't call. Right. Space to think. More likely space to strategize with Eric about damage control. I made breakfast for the girls, helped them get ready for school, and tried to act like their world wasn't about to implode. Lily, sharp as always, picked up on the tension immediately. Where's Mom? She asked over her cereal. She had to leave early for work, I said. Big project deadline. Her car was gone when I got up to use the bathroom at midnight, Lily said, giving me a look that was way too knowing for a 12-year-old. Maybe she went to the office really, really early. Dad, Ava said seriously, Mom doesn't work at midnight. Nobody works at midnight except people on TV. Smart kids. Too smart for their own good sometimes. After dropping them at school, I drove straight to Marcus Webb's office. Drew had set up the meeting for 9 a.m., and I arrived with a briefcase full of evidence that would have made a prosecutor weep with joy. Webb turned out to be exactly what Drew had promised. Expensive, ruthless, and completely unimpressed by my story. He'd heard it all before, apparently. Adultery, deception, preemptive legal maneuvering, he said, flipping through the documents I'd brought. It's a classic pattern. Your wife hired Patricia Hoffman, you said. You know her? Oh, I know Patty. We've danced before. She's good at what she does, but she has one fatal flaw. She assumes her opponents are idiots. Webb leaned back in his leather chair, a predatory smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The good news is that your wife's strategy is now completely useless. She can't claim you're controlling or paranoid when she's the one who was planning a sneak attack. She can't paint you as an unfit father when she's the one who was ready to abandon her children for a boyfriend. So what's our strategy? Simple. We file first, we file fast, and we file with everything. Adultery, abandonment, financial misconduct, the whole package. By the time Patty figures out what hit her, we'll have the moral high ground and the legal advantage. What about custody? With your evidence? You'll get primary custody if you want it. The question is, do you want it? I thought about Lily's suspicious questions and Ava's midnight observations. I want what's best for my daughters. That's not what I asked. Yes, I want primary custody. They need stability, and Vanessa has proven she's not capable of providing it. Webb nodded approvingly. Good. Righteous anger is useful, but cold calculation wins cases. Now, let's talk about your wife's boyfriend. For the next hour, we dissected Eric Maddox's life like we were performing surgery. His finances, his business dealings, his romantic history, everything that might be relevant to a custody battle where character mattered. What we found was illuminating. Eric had been married twice before, both marriages ending in messy divorces involving infidelity. His real estate business was leveraged to the hilt, and he'd been juggling creditors for months. The beach house that had impressed Vanessa so much, it was mortgaged for more than it was worth. Your wife picked a real winner, Webb said dryly, a serial cheater with serious financial problems. This just keeps getting better. Better for who? Better for you. Worse for them. When this all comes out in court, it's going to look like your wife abandoned her family for a man who can't even afford his own lifestyle. By the time I left Webb's office, I felt like I was holding a nuclear weapon. The divorce papers would be filed by the end of the day, and Vanessa would be served by the weekend. No more secrets, no more lies, no more pretending everything was fine. I was halfway home when my phone rang. Vanessa. We need to talk. she said, without preamble. I think we said everything we needed to say last night. That's not true, and you know it. What happened in Dr. Chen's office, that wasn't how I wanted things to go. How did you want things to go, Vanessa? With me finding out about your affair from divorce papers? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. But it doesn't matter anymore. I'm filing for divorce today. There was a long pause. You don't have to do this, Nate. We can work something out. We could have worked something out 6 months ago, before you started sleeping with Eric, before you started planning to destroy my relationship with our daughters, before you decided I was the enemy instead of your partner. I never said you were the enemy. You didn't have to. Your actions said it for you. Another pause. What do you want? I want what's fair. Primary custody, fair division of assets, and for you to stop lying to our children about why their family is falling apart. And if I don't agree, then we'll let a judge decide. And trust me, Vanessa, you don't want a judge to see all the evidence I have. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking slightly, but it felt good. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life. That afternoon, I picked up the girls from school and took them to my mother's house. They needed to hear about the divorce from me, not from playground gossip or overheard phone calls. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Lily asked before I could even start my carefully rehearsed speech. What makes you ask that? Because you look like Mr. Peterson did when he was getting divorced last year, and because Mom's been acting weird for weeks. I looked at my daughters, Lily with her sharp eyes and protective stance, Ava with her sensitive soul and worried expression, and realized they'd been watching their parents' marriage fall apart just as closely as I had. Yes, I said simply, we are. Ava started crying immediately. Lily just nodded, like she'd been expecting it. Is it because of the man Mom's been seeing? Lily asked. My mother, who'd been pretending to read a magazine in the corner, looked up sharply. What man? The tall one with the fancy car. He picked Mom up from school last week when she thought we were in after-school care. But I forgot my math book and saw them together. Jesus, even the kids knew. It's complicated, sweetheart, I said. But yes, that's part of it. Are we going to have to choose who to live with? Ava asked through her tears. No, baby. You're going to live with me, and you'll visit Mom regularly. Your lives aren't going to change that much. Promise? Ava said. Promise. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then, Dad, are you okay? The question hit me harder than anything Vanessa had said in counseling. My 12-year-old daughter was worried about me while her world was falling apart. I'm going to be okay, I said. We're all going to be okay. It's going to be different, but we're going to be okay. That evening, after the girls were in bed at my mother's house, I sat on her back porch with a beer and tried to process the day. In 12 hours, I'd gone from being a man trying to save his marriage to being a man actively ending it. It should have felt devastating. Instead, it felt like relief. My phone buzzed with a text from Drew. How did it go with Webb? Nuclear option activated, I typed back. Any regrets? I thought about that for a long time. Did I regret the end of my marriage? The pain my daughters were going through? The destruction of the life I'd spent 14 years building? None, I typed. This should have happened months ago. Good man, you're going to come out of this stronger. I'm going to come out of this free, and for the first time in months, that felt like enough. The divorce papers were served on Saturday morning while Vanessa was having coffee with Eric at his beach house. I know this because I was parked across the street, watching through binoculars like some kind of suburban spy. The process server was a professional. He walked right up to the front door, handed Vanessa the papers, and walked away while she stood there, in Eric's borrowed bathrobe, looking like she'd been slapped. Eric came up behind her, read over her shoulder, and I watched his face go through a series of interesting expressions. Shock, anger, calculation, and finally something that looked a lot like fear. Good. He should be afraid. My phone rang 30 seconds later. You son of a bastard, Vanessa said without preamble. Good morning to you too. I trust you received my paperwork? How could you do this to me? To our family? I'm not doing anything to our family. I'm protecting what's left of it. By destroying me in court? By telling the truth in court. There's a difference. I could hear Eric in the background, his voice urgent but too quiet to make out words, probably telling her to hang up, to call her lawyer, to stop giving me ammunition. We can still work this out privately, Vanessa said. We don't have to air our dirty laundry in public. You should have thought about that before you started planning your sneak attack. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Nate. Really? Because the custody agreement you had drafted sure looked like it was designed to hurt me. Supervised visitation? Seriously? That was Patricia being thorough. That was Patricia being vicious, just like you taught her to be. Another pause. More urgent whispering from Eric. What do you want? Vanessa asked finally. I want what I've always wanted. To be a good father to our daughters, and to be treated with basic respect and honesty. Since you've proven incapable of the latter, I'll settle for the former. And if I fight you? Then you'll lose, and it'll be expensive and public and humiliating for everyone involved, but especially for you. I hung up and drove home, feeling like I'd just won the first battle in what was sure to be a long war. But when I got to the house, I found that the war had already escalated. Someone had been inside. Nothing was broken, nothing was obviously missing, but I could tell immediately that someone had been through my things. Drawers slightly askew, papers not quite where I'd left them, my computer showing recent activity I hadn't initiated. I called Webb immediately. They're looking for dirt, he said, after I described what I'd found. Trying to find something they can use against you in court. Did they find anything? Did they have anything to find? I thought about that. My browser history was boring. My financial records were clean. My personal files were exactly what they appeared to be. The most interesting thing on my computer was the evidence I'd gathered against Vanessa, and that was stored on encrypted drives in my safety deposit box. No, I said. Nothing useful. Then they just made another mistake. Breaking and entering, even with a key, is still a crime, especially when it's done to gather evidence for a civil case. Can we prove it was them? We don't have to. We just have to make them think we can. Monday morning brought a call from Patricia Hoffman, Vanessa's lawyer. Her voice was crisp and professional, with just a hint of barely controlled fury. Mr. Harper, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I wasn't aware we'd gotten started at all. Your filing on Friday was aggressive, perhaps unnecessarily so. Perhaps your client's behavior was unnecessarily deceptive. Be that as it may, I think we can resolve this matter without a protracted court battle that will be expensive and painful for everyone involved. I'm listening. My client is prepared to offer joint custody, a fair division of assets, and reasonable support arrangements. Define reasonable. She named a number that would have left me paying Vanessa's bills for the next 10 years while she played. House with Eric in his overpriced beach palace. That's not reasonable, I said. That's extortion. Mr. Harper, I should warn you that if this case goes to trial, we'll be forced to present evidence about your controlling behavior, your invasion of your wife's privacy, your obsessive surveillance of her activities. Miss Hoffman, I interrupted, you should warn your client that if this case goes to trial, I'll be forced to present evidence about her adultery, her abandonment of her children, her conspiracy to defraud me of custody and assets, and her boyfriend's history of financial irresponsibility and serial infidelity. There was a long pause. I beg your pardon? Eric Maddox. 2 previous divorces, both involving his affairs. Currently underwater on his mortgage, behind on his business loans, and being investigated by the State Real Estate Board for questionable practices. Your client sure knows how to pick them. Another pause, longer this time. How did you... I'm very good at research, Miss Hoffman. It's what I do for a living. Mr. Harper, I think you should know that breaking into someone's home to gather evidence is illegal, regardless of... I haven't broken into anyone's home. But since you brought it up, you should know that someone broke into mine over the weekend. Someone with a key. Someone looking for dirt they could use in court. Someone who made a very serious mistake. The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. I'll need to consult with my client, she said finally. You do that. And Miss Hoffman? Next time you want to negotiate, start with an offer that doesn't insult my intelligence. I hung up, feeling like I'd just won round 2. But the real victory came that afternoon, when Vanessa showed up at my office. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup was smeared, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in days. The confident woman who'd been planning my destruction just a week ago was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate and defeated. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. Not here. Somewhere private. We drove to a coffee shop downtown, one of those anonymous chain places where nobody would recognize us or care about our drama. Vanessa ordered a triple shot espresso and clutched it like a lifeline. "This is all spiraling out of control," she said. "It was out of control the moment you decided to have an affair. I never meant for it to go this far." "What did you mean for it to do?" She was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee like it might have answers. I was unhappy, Nate. I had been for years. I felt trapped, invisible, like I was disappearing into this life that wasn't really mine. So you decided to disappear into someone else's life instead. I didn't plan it. Eric and I, we were just friends at first. He listened to me, made me feel interesting again, made me remember who I used to be before I became just someone's wife and someone's mother. You were never just someone's wife and mother. You were my partner. You were Lily and Ava's mother. You were a successful professional with your own career and your own life. But I wasn't happy. So you decided to blow up our entire family instead of talking to me about it? I tried to talk to you. You never listened. I wanted to argue with that, but there was probably some truth to it. I'd been so focused on providing for our family, on being the stable, reliable husband she said she wanted, that I'd missed the signs that she was drowning in that stability. "Okay," I said. "Maybe I wasn't the best listener. Maybe I took you for granted sometimes. But that doesn't justify what you did." I know. Tears were streaming down her face now. I know I screwed up everything, but it doesn't have to end like this. We can still fix it. How? I'll end things with Eric. We can go back to counseling, really work on our problems this time. Start over. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw not the woman I'd fallen in love with, but a stranger wearing her face. Someone who thought love was something you could turn on and off like a faucet. Someone who believed that starting over meant pretending the last 6 months had never happened. It's too late for that, Vanessa. Why? Because of your pride? Because of trust? Because you didn't just cheat on me, you tried to destroy me. You planned to take our daughters away from me, to paint me as an unfit father, to leave me with nothing while you started fresh with your boyfriend. That was Patricia's idea, not mine. You signed off on it. You went along with it. You were going to let it happen. I was scared. I thought you'd try to hurt me in court. When have I ever tried to hurt you? In 14 years of marriage, when have I ever been anything but fair with you? She couldn't answer that, because we both knew the truth. I'd bent over backward to make our marriage work, to give her everything she said she wanted, to be the husband I thought she deserved, and she'd repaid that loyalty by planning my destruction. What do you want from me? She asked finally. I want you to sign the papers. I want you to agree to my custody proposal. I want you to stop fighting me and start thinking about what's best for our daughters. And if I do that, then we can end this quietly, with dignity intact. The girls get stability, you get your freedom, and we both get to move on with our lives. And Eric? Eric can go to hell for all I care, but that's between you and him. Vanessa nodded slowly, like she was finally accepting the inevitable. Okay, I'll sign the papers. Good. But I want something in return. What? I want you to promise me that you won't turn the girls against me, that you won't poison them against their mother. I thought about Lily's sharp questions, about Ava's tears, about how they'd both seen through their mother's lies long before I'd been ready to admit the truth. I won't have to, I said. They're smart enough to figure things out for themselves. That's not a promise. It's the only one I can make. I won't lie to them about you, but I won't lie for you either. They deserve the truth, even if it's complicated. Vanessa finished her coffee and stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. For what it's worth, I did love you. I still do. In my way. I know, I said, but love isn't enough when it comes without respect. She left without another word, and I sat in that anonymous coffee shop, feeling like I'd just watched the final scene of a very long, very sad movie. 14 years of marriage, reduced to a conversation in a chain restaurant about custody agreements and broken promises. But as I drove home to pick up my daughters, I realized something surprising. I felt free. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like myself again. Not the husband who was never quite good enough, not the father who was taken for granted, not the man who was slowly disappearing into someone else's expectations. Just me. Nate Harper. Single father, IT security specialist, and survivor of a marriage that should have ended years before it finally did. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was honest. And after months of lies, honesty felt like a gift. The papers were signed the following week. Vanessa got the house. She could afford the mortgage payments with Eric's help, assuming his financial problems didn't catch up with him first. I got primary custody of the girls, plus enough child support to make sure they were comfortable. Most importantly, I got my daughters. Full-time, no games, no manipulation, no using them as weapons in an adult war they'd never asked to be part of. On our first weekend as an officially single-parent family, I took Lily and Ava to the beach. Not Eric's beach, not the scene of Vanessa's betrayal, but a different stretch of sand where we could build new memories. "Dad," Lily said as we watched the sunset, "are you happy now?" I thought about that question seriously. Was I happy? I was certainly relieved. I was definitely free. I was proud of how I'd handled the divorce, proud of the relationship I had with my daughters, proud of the man I'd become through the crucible of betrayal and recovery. "Yeah, sweetheart," I said finally. "I think I am." "Good," she said, leaning against my shoulder. "You deserve to be happy." And you know what? She was right.